Section 2, Creating Your Own Digital Data. In this section, we'll learn about the functionality of geodatabases in ArcGIS. We'll then work with feature editing and topology in the geodatabase. Viewers will then learn how to georeference an image in ArcMap, and finally create a new feature class and digitize new features for that feature class. Diving into geodatabases in ArcGIS. In this video, we'll review common spatial data formats in ArcGIS. We'll then learn about the capabilities of geodatabases and explore one of these capabilities by learning how to set a field domain for a feature class in ArcGIS. The most common vector data format that you'll likely run into in your GIS work is the shapefile. The shapefile is a collection of related files in a directory, each of which serves some purpose in regards to how the spatial data are encoded. For example, you might have a file that contains the feature geometry, another that contains the attributes, and others for indexing and the coordinate system of the data. The geodatabase, however, is the native data structure for ArcGIS. The geodatabase stores vector data as tables. Given that it's based on a relational database management system model, it can also store relationships between tables and many other types of datasets, such as raster datasets. Geodatabases in ArcGIS come in a variety of formats. If you're working individually, it's likely that the most common format that you'll encounter is the file geodatabase, which is formatted as a collection of datasets held in a file system folder. Personal geodatabases are less common now. They're geographic data stored as a Microsoft Access database that's readable by ArcGIS. You might also encounter ArcSDE or Enterprise Geodatabases, which are collections of datasets that are stored on a network in a multi-user environment. Vector data in geodatabases are called feature classes, and so you might then work with a point, line, or polygon feature class. You can do a lot of things in a geodatabase. They're very flexible within ArcGIS. You can define representation of geographic features. You can organize your data elements. For example, one thing that you can do within a geodatabase is create something called a feature dataset, which might store a series of related feature classes. You can set rules for managing data integrity, such as domains and subtypes. You can define spatial relationships between features, such as examining topology and setting topological rules. You can define relationships between tables, which manifest themselves as relationship classes, which explicitly define these relationships. And you can also model complex data structures, such as networks, whether it be a road network or a pipeline network. We'll focus here on domains in the geodatabase. Domains are very important for ensuring data integrity within the geodatabase, as they can specify the range of valid values for a field. Domains are specified in the geodatabase inside of ArcCatalog. You can then apply those domains, once defined, to different fields within tables or feature classes. Briefly now, I'd like to give a demonstration of how to define and then apply a domain within the geodatabase. So I go here to ArcCatalog, in which I've navigated to my neighborhood geodatabase. If you're following along, go ahead and navigate to that geodatabase now. When the geodatabase is expanded in ArcCatalog, we note that it has two polygon feature classes inside of it. One is a buildings feature class, which represents hypothetical buildings that might need to be merged into a master dataset for a city. And then you'll also notice a second feature class called Privet Subdivision, representing a hypothetical parcel subdivision, in which each feature represents a parcel of land. We can preview the feature geometry, and we can also preview the attributes by changing the preview drop-down menu at the bottom of the screen to table. We note that in our subdivision feature class, we have our object ID and we have our shape. We have our default length and area fields, but also we have an address. In the geodatabase itself, analysts are able to define domains. To define a domain, right-click the geodatabase in ArcCatalog and choose Properties. Find the Domains tab and click it. This is where you can create new domains that then can be applied to fields in feature classes within the Geodatabase. We're working with hypothetical data here, so we're going to make a hypothetical domain in which we can classify land parcels as either single-family residential, multifamily residential, or a commercial zoning code. So we might call the domain name zoning, and I type it into the domain name box. I then give my zoning domain a description. I might call it zoning code for land parcels. I then need to specify the domain properties. There are a variety of different types of domain properties that you can adjust depending on the field type. In this case, I'm going to set a domain that's going to apply to a text field. So I'm going to choose text from the field type drop-down menu. From there, I can specify a domain type. Coded values is the only option for text. Had I chosen a numeric field type, I would be able to define options such as the split policy and the merge policy, and potentially a range of values that the field could take on. In this case, I'm going to choose coded values that are the only values that are possible for cells within that given field with this zoning domain to take on. I'm going to set 3 codes. The first code, SFR. The description will be single family residential. The second code, MFR, for multifamily residential. The final code, COM, will represent commercial. I can click Apply to generate the domain, and then I can click OK. Now that I've created this domain, I might want to apply it to a field within one of my Geodatabase feature classes. In this case, I'm going to go back to my Privet subdivision parcels feature class. In ArcCatalog, I'll right-click, and I will choose Properties. From there, I'm going to identify the Fields tab, from which I can create a new field. I click to set a new field name. I'm going to set that field name as zoning type, with a data type of text. I can then specify some field properties, what the alias might be, if I want to allow null values, what the default value is, and what the domain is as well. I'll click in the domain dropdown and I find my zoning domain, which I can apply to my new field. I'm going to set the length just to 3, because I know that I only need 3 characters to represent my coded values in the field. I click Apply, and I note that when I click on my zoning type field, all of the changes I've made have been applied to the new field. I click OK then to close the window.